Good afternoon. I'm honored to be here and join Lee Hamilton as the chair and vice chair of the National Commission on Terrorist Attacks upon the United States, which I guess we're calling a 9/11 Commission. We're fortunate. We had a good meeting of the commission today. We do have here with us, as you probably know, our executive director, Philip Zelikow, and his deputy, Chris Kojim. And we're now working very hard to set up the organization, build an outstanding staff, obtain the needed security clearances, access the information, find out how we're going to access the information we need, and to begin to work on this task that Congress and the President have asked us to do. We met today in our new offices and agreed on a number of things. One is that we're going to hold a set of initial public hearings in New York City as soon as we can arrange that. We want to offer an opportunity out in the open for families of the victims of those attacks, concerned officials, affected groups, perhaps members of Congress, to talk with us about the Commission's plans, both what we plan to do and what they would like us, most importantly, to do. But one of the first tasks is to talk, as we did today, about the scope of our work, building on the language of the law, making sure we're covering everything that the United States Congress has asked us to cover. We have really a very solemn burden here, and that is to tell a story about what happened, how it happened, and perhaps most importantly, the kind of things we can do to make sure that it never happens again. We have the powers we need. The Congress has given us those powers. We have assurances of cooperation from both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue as we begin our task, and also, by the way, from state and local officials as well. We're going to examine the origins and varieties of the terrorist network that attacked us. We're going to try to figure out how they see the world, their organization, their recruitment, their training, and their assessment of us, as best we can understand it anyway, as of today. We'll also consider how well our government understood this enemy, building on the work already done by the Congressional Joint Inquiry, and examining both executive management and the choices made by both the executive and the Congress. We're going to examine America's international strategies against terrorism as it evolved through 2001, especially after the East African bombings in 1998, and this would include the capabilities available to different agencies and the work of American diplomacy. That will include U.S. policy toward Afghanistan and the interactions with crucial friends such as Saudi Arabia. The quality of our cooperation with our friends, German law enforcement agencies, intelligence agencies, monitoring activities, for instance, that took place in Hamburg, will obviously be very, very important to our task. We're going to consider America's defenses at home. That starts at our borders and includes how we enforce immigration laws. We'll look at information sharing. We'll assess the readiness of American law enforcement agencies and the state of our intelligence work against terrorism in the United States. And of course, as mandated, we'll be looking very hard at aviation security. We must improve our understanding of what happened on 9/11, starting with the final moves of the attackers and, of course, those 4 flights. We will try to understand this terrible tragedy that unfolded in New York City, at the Pentagon, and in Pennsylvania. The law also requires us to look at the immediate response to those attacks, from the New York City firefighters to crisis management at the White House and the related issues of continuity of government. But it's important to think we're not just going to be looking backwards. We'll take stock of the lessons that have been learned so far, acknowledging what our mobilized nation has accomplished. We'll also offer policy recommendations that go beyond the lessons already learned. And we hope to be able to do that supported by a very careful analysis of all our options. We might also try to offer some wider reflections beyond policy about what we think we've learned from our work about this new era, about the new world we live in since 9/11, about the terrorist danger, and how we as a people can cope with catastrophes, and about the opportunities that may arise from better understanding of these terrible events. We have a lot of work to do. We're in a process of getting the clearances, of hiring staff. We've got our space, the beginnings of our space, and we're going to move forward. Lee, do you want to add?
No, I think you've said it all, Tom. We'll just take questions.
Okay.
Governor, you mentioned that you need to get security clearances clearly to do the work that you're going to do. What do you hope to, where will you be looking for classified information? What do you hope to get? What do you hope to learn from classified information?
Well, we hope to learn both in the various agencies what their response was to these attacks presently, in the past what they knew or didn't know, and whether or not they're able to pass information freely from one agency to another. We hope to learn from interviews that, even as we speak, I guess are still going on with some people who may have planned this terrible attack. So there's a tremendous amount of information out there, and we start with the information that has already been compiled by the Joint Committee of the Congress. There's a lot of information there. We've talked to the chairman. We are now preparing to access that information, and once we have a full understanding about what they've got and talk to them about where the holes may be, then we'll be able to proceed to fill in those holes as part of our work.
Governor, are you going to seek testimony from top cabinet officials like Rumsfeld, Powell, and Rice? Is it important to get testimony directly from them?
We're going to follow wherever the trail leads, and it's too early now to say we're going to take testimony from this person or that person. But as we find out the facts, they're going to lead to other facts. And as we talk to one person, it may lead to another person. And we haven't got any problem in calling whoever it takes to get all the facts in the best possible way we can, and fill in our report so it's credible. And we can't do that unless we just follow the trail where it leads.
I think it's important to add to that we have been given very broad assurances from both Capitol Hill and from the executive branch of cooperation, and we're very pleased with that. We think it's a good start. So we expect to have good access to get the information we need.
Aside from the public hearings you're going to have in New York with the families of the victims, how much of this fact gathering will be done in public?
It probably depends on the facts, because, and what I mean is there are a number of the things we're going to have to look at that are classified. We can't do that in public and look at those facts because they are classified. So we'll do as much as possible in public, but there's certain parts we're not going to be able to do. We're going to have a number of public hearings, but we recognize also that public hearings take a lot of staff time and a lot of work to set up. We've got a very short time frame here, and we want to make sure we operate in a way that makes sure we can get the work done in a timely fashion.
And what is that time frame?
We've got now, well, we've got originally 18 months in the passage of the original resolution. We lost over a month due to the people who came in and out of my job and Lee's job. So we're already, in a sense, behind the eight ball and racing to catch up. But I think we're doing now things, I think, in a very expeditious manner, and the commission's meeting every 2 weeks, and we're moving forward pretty well.
Let me point out that the mandate of the commission is very broad. The work done in the Congress by the Joint Inquiry Committee, we think, was very solid work, very good work. We will build on that. But the Joint Inquiry focused really on intelligence. We have that responsibility, but we have an awful lot more. We're charged, for example, at looking at law enforcement, diplomacy, at immigration control, at aviation security, terrorist financing. So the mandate of the Commission is exceedingly broad, far beyond what the joint inquiry looked into. And a huge amount of the information that we will be seeking is already in the public domain. I know there's a special interest on the intelligence side, and that's an important part of the work, but it is by no means all of the work.
We'll be looking at what the administration has done since 9/11 and assessing that and whether it's been effective or ineffective or sufficient.
We're specifically charged with the responsibility to evaluate what's been done, and we will do that. We want to understand the circumstances and the facts that are surrounding 9/11, the government's response to it, the government's counterterrorism strategy. We'll be looking at all of those things. But as Tom suggested in his remarks, we look backwards only for the purpose of looking forward. And what we want to end up with here are recommendations that will make the American people more secure and safer. And that means we look forward. We look backwards only for the purpose of looking forward.
For those members of the Governor, for those members of the commission who have previously represented the airline industry in some respect, maybe as a lobbyist, such as former Governor Thompson, was there any discussion today involving that issue and how it should be resolved? Has Governor Thompson agreed to recuse himself from any airline-related matters before the commission, for example?
We have talked, we talked in very broad terms about that, and mainly we talked in terms of full disclosure. In other words, if anybody's got any kind of interest or any kind of background or participation in any of the events that we will be then investigating, public ought to know that, and that will be fully disclosed. On the one hand, they may not get involved in that area, and on the other hand, if somebody knows a lot about an area, we don't totally want to not use their expertise either. So it's a mix. But if anybody, the public will be fully aware by full disclosure of any area or any member of the commission may have had an interest or a background or represented anybody in any way.
So that does not rule out Governor Thompson, for example, participating in these matters as long as he has disclosed his past dealings with American Airlines.
He may or may not. We're going to divide up into task forces because we have to get this kind of broad agenda done. And there's not a lot of demand to be on the airline security task force. That Governor Thompson, as a matter of fact, said he'd be happy not to be on that particular task force, so I assume he won't be.
Say that today?
I think he said that today.
What's the deadline for filing the personal financial disclosure forms? I believe you've already filed yours.
I've already done mine, yeah.
Other members?
I don't know how many members have and how many haven't, do you know?
Well, the vice chairman is not, I can tell you, but we'll do so very soon. I don't think we have a deadline. We file with the Senate Ethics Committee, and we follow the rules of the Senate Ethics Committee. So we have no deadline from them, so far as I'm aware at this point. But whatever they tell us to do, we will do and do on time.
Yeah, and the very first meeting of the commission, that subject came up and everybody agreed for full disclosure. There was no disagreement by any member of the commission. So.
The hearings in New York City, when do you expect to have them and how many, and over how long a period of time?
Well, we will have a number of hearings, I believe, in the New York metropolitan area between now and the end of our work. We wanted to hold the very first hearing in New York City. I presume we'll have some hearings here as well. The first hearing, we're talking about the tail end of March, beginning of April. Because by that time, we'll be a fully operating, functioning, staffed commission.
Speaking of staff, will you update us on, in addition to the 2 hires, if there are others, and also what number you think you'll be getting to in terms of hiring? And additionally, can you tell us a little about the office space? Is it secure, as you were hoping, and will that be the one and only office in Washington?
The office space we have now is secure and does include, I've learned this terminology, a skiff. In fact, the whole office, I guess, is a skiff, if I'm correct. And we are going to need probably some additional office space beyond that, but we've got enough now to be up and operating. We're also going to have a smaller office in New York City, where there'll be some work done there also.
With regard to the staff, we have an executive director. We have a deputy director, executive director. We have an administrative officer who has been hired but not yet on board. We have a security officer who is on board. We've approved 3 to 5 additional staff people who will be hired. You asked for the total number of staff. We still have that under review. It's probably a little early to give you a figure with respect to the total staff. Governor Kean has said on several occasions that he wants to be a very lean staff. I suspect you've probably heard that before, and other commissions will do our very best to keep it down. We will have a number of teams or task forces looking at the various areas that the resolution requires us to look into, and they will have to be staffed. But it's a little early for us to give you a specific number yet. It'll not be a huge staff.
Do you have a deadline for completing your work?
Yeah, we have a congressional deadline, and that's 18 months from the time Congress passed, a bill was signed into law, which puts us into a year from next May or June. May?
I think we're looking to file a final report in May, I believe, or perhaps June next year, under the current requirements of the resolution.
Hi, Governor. Do you expect that both of you have talked about how the 9/11 Commission will be a starting point? Will you be re-examining a lot of the issues and evidence that they've already compiled? I mean, I guess with a skeptical eye, or simply sort of accepting it and moving on, if you understand?
This is the work done by the special committee?
Done by the congressional
Joint inquiry. Yeah,
Joint inquiry.
we have no reason. I mean, everything we've heard is that they've done a very good job, but there are holes. There are things they weren't able to complete, areas they weren't able to get to, witnesses they didn't have a chance to hear. And what we're going to do is we're not going to replicate their work, because that would be a waste of time. We haven't got time to waste. So we're going to take the work they've already done and build on it in the intelligence area, and hopefully make a more complete record based on their work.
We were required by the resolution that established the commission to look first at the work that has been done by the joint inquiry and others, and then to go forward from that point. I've looked, and I think Tom has as well, at the work done by the joint inquiry. We think it's very high caliber, but as those of you know who have looked through that report, they just didn't get to a number of questions that they wanted to get. They ran out of time. We will pick up from where they left off. For example, they did not consider at all the question of the Congress and the way it handles intelligence matters. And in speaking to the chairman of the joint inquiry, that's an area they very much want us to examine, and we will do so.
On that same line, are there other issues they didn't get to on the intelligence end that you want to look at? Or what are some of those holes?
And the intelligence, our mandate is much broader than this.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but what were some of the holes in the
The whole,
intelligence?
we have not talked at length. I mean, what I want to do really is talk to the chairman in both the Senate and the House. I mean, Lee and I are planning to make congressional visits. We're going to talk to them at some length, and they have told me some areas, but they're going to tell me more. And I think between us and our staff, we'll be able to spell out those areas better in the future than I could right today.
You mentioned when you were going over the list of areas you'll be looking at, the response by law enforcement, firefighters, et cetera. One of the very specific areas that the families have listed is the reaction by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. Do you consider that is that under the umbrella that you discussed?
Yes. All the circumstances surrounding that. And by the way, let me say this. I've now met a number of times, as have other members of the commission, with groups representing the families, and they are extraordinarily helpful. They themselves have done a lot of work, and they have materials that, best to my knowledge, nobody else has, including investigations done in Germany, and they are feeding all their materials, all their help into our commission. And I just believe from what I've seen in our meetings so far that we're going to have a wonderful working partnership, and they're going to be extraordinarily helpful to our work.
Mr. Hamilton, you mentioned earlier that one of the unanswered questions was the way in which Congress dealt with the intelligence agencies. Could you be a little more specific? What do you need to know? Is it a question of whether oversight was sufficient, whether they really kept a tight enough rein on the agencies? What were you getting at?
I think we will be looking at the job that the Congress did with regard to the oversight of the intelligence community. In that sense, we'll be looking back. But I think we'll also be addressing the question of how it should structure itself to deal with intelligence matters. There's a lot of discussion of that on the Hill. We probably will be making recommendations with respect to how the Congress handles intelligence matters.
Congressman, I wonder if you could tell us how your appointment to the President's Commission on Terrorism and this panel will dovetail, conflict, blend
My
into each other?
appointment?
Yeah.
I serve on the President's Advisory Commission with regard to Homeland Security. And then I serve on this commission as well. I think the commission, the 9/11 commission, the one headed by Governor Kean here, has similar responsibilities in some respect with regard to subject matter. The purpose of the Homeland Security Advisory Commission is to advise Secretary Ridge and the President on what steps should be taken to make the homeland more secure. And that will be obviously some overlap with what we're doing. But that's a commission to advise the executive branch. The 9/11 Commission that we're meeting about today, I think has a broader mandate and is a commission established, of course, by the Congress. And so we will report recommendations to them as well as to the President. Some overlap, clearly. Okay.
Just one more, if you don't mind. Governor Kean, you told a local newspaper in New Jersey, I'm looking for the quote, that you expect to find 20 or 30 things, had they occurred differently, might have prevented 9/11. Could you elaborate a little on that? Do you expect them to be across all of the areas you're looking at?
I suspect so. What I had in mind was if people might have operated a little differently, would the terrorists have gotten into the country? If things had been done differently, Would more people have been saved in the buildings themselves if airline security had been handled on that day a little bit differently? Would the event still have happened? I mean, if some things in the intelligence community that happened out of this country had happened in a different way? I mean, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. I just suspect we're going to find a number of areas where if things had been done differently, the results might have been different.
Just before we conclude, may I simply say that I think both Tom and I are enormously impressed with the quality of the commissioners that have been appointed. President Bush made a superb appointment as chairman of this commission when he appointed Tom Kean. The Republican and the Democratic leaders in the Congress, I think, likewise have made an excellent selection. Tom and I are very pleased to work with them. We're going to be serious, we're going to be independent, we're going to be nonpartisan, we're going to be fair, we're going to be thorough in our investigation, and we'll do the very best job we can. One of the things that has impressed me, and I think Tom as well, is how seriously the commissioners take this responsibility. Several of them have said to me, people with vast experience in government and commissions, that this is the most important commission they've ever served on. I feel that way myself individually, and I've served on a good many commissions. I don't think you could have a more important, serious task than we have in conducting this commission's work, and we're going to give it our very best shot.
Thank you, Lee. I couldn't agree more.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your interest.